All right, thanks, Marco. Thanks to the CIPHER organizers for having me and my Financial Health Network colleagues this year. So today I'm going to be talking about a project that we undertook last fall, where we used linked survey and bank account transaction data in the Understanding America study to understand how gasoline spending habits changed as gas prices spiked last summer. This project is part of our Financial Health Pulse research initiative, which is funded by the Citi Foundation with additional funding from the Principal Foundation. And we field the Financial Health Pulse survey through the Understanding America study, and we work with data analysts at Plaid to analyze bank account transaction data. So why am I interested in gas spending? Well, about a year ago, I saw a clip from the NBA talk show, NBA on TNT, where Shaquille O'Neal and his co-host, Kenny Smith, are debating the merits of buying a large gas guzzling vehicle and then chatting about how you would maybe manage or budget your gas spending with such a vehicle. So I'm actually going to play part of this clip for you.
Great education. Yeah. I didn't want to get a certain vehicle because of the amount of gas I would have to spend. Yeah. It costs like $80
to fill it up.
And he said, then you said,
when it gets to half, then you put $20, you bring it back to full.
Yeah. But if I keep doing, I would have to stop more often and still spend 80.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't.
Why?
You're complaining about when it gets to zero, you spend 80, right? When it gets to half, you put 20. Then when it get back to half, you put 20.
Yeah, but I'll keep stopping, putting 20 in, and it'll equal 80, the same amount of gas. I'm driving the same amount of gas.
The average human stops once a week for gas, right? With you only work here twice. You would probably have to stop maybe once every 2 weeks.
Okay, so arithmetic problems aside, in case you missed it, Shaq seems to be arguing that one strategy of making gas purchases more manageable is not actually to drive less, but to actually go to the gas station more often, which in his example would mean spending $20 each time he goes to the gas station instead of spending $80, presumably going 4 times as often. And this really grabbed my attention because last summer, gas prices were at record highs, and I began to wonder whether people really do what Shaq is describing here. And more importantly than that, I wondered whether people who have real cash flow constraints, real liquidity constraints, unlike Shaq probably, are more likely to do this. Okay, and then I realized that I could actually observe how much people spend at gas stations and how often they're making purchases at gas stations with the bank account transaction data that is in the UAS, which is called UAS Fin. And UAS Fin data is collected when Understanding America study panelists link their online bank accounts to the platform using their bank account credentials. And then once a financial institution is linked, transaction level data is automatically pulled via Plaid into a data set. And Marco is going to talk actually more about how that works in the next panel, I believe. Okay, so I have that transaction level data. And then on the survey data side, I have access to, from the UAS still, I have access to additional variables. At the Financial Health Network, we have a strong focus on financial health measurement. We have our own financial health measurement framework, which is based on 8 survey questions. And I won't go into the details of the scale here, but I'm interested in financial health in this context because it's very closely related to whether someone would be experiencing the kind of constraints that I'm interested in. And I'm curious about whether those constraints may be motivating this behavior. All right. And so here's how I construct the data frame that I'm actually working with. I'm starting with every transaction from every credit card and every checking account that has been linked to UAS Fin. I then roll that up into individual daily histories of gas station spending. I then create 30-day rolling sums of these variables on each person day, which just gives me fewer zeros to work with and smooths out the data. And then finally, I'm merging on financial health status from the survey data. And I'm also getting national average gas price data from the Energy Information Administration. Once I have that price data, I can very crudely estimate how many gallons of gas were purchased at each transaction just by dividing dollars spent at that transaction by the average price of gas. And the result is 353 people observed on each day between February 1st, 2021 and July 31st, 2022. So here's why I only have 350 people. Of the roughly 9,000 people who had been invited to UAS-Fin when I started working on this, about 950 had ever connected at least one credit card or checking account to the platform. However, whenever you start working with this data, you lose about half of your sample almost immediately. As soon as you specify a time period for analysis, because you need people who had an account linked for the entire time period that you're interested in. And people's accounts become unlinked pretty frequently from UAS-Fin, both because they are dropping out of the study, but also because they fail to update their bank account credentials in the platform, which means Plaid is cut off from accessing their data and they drop out of our data set. So that's the main attrition problem that I'm dealing with. Then I lose a few people whose gas spending is implausible and probably inaccurately classified by Plaid. And then I lose a few more people when I merge the survey data onto the transaction data, because not everyone in UAS-Fin has taken a financial health pulse survey recently. So that's how I get from 9,000 to 350. But I'm trying my best. And with these 350 people, I'm trying to answer the following questions. Did people increase their frequency of gas station transactions as prices increased, holding total gas consumption constant? So we're interested in whether people are increasing the amount of times they visit the gas station, independent of how much gas they're actually purchasing overall. And then I'm interested in whether financially unhealthy people did this more than financially healthy people, which would help suggest that cash flow constraints may help explain this behavior. So as a first step, I'm just plotting gas spending over the whole time period, both for financially healthy and unhealthy people. Here, price is the black line plotted on the right-hand side axis, and estimated gallons of gas purchased per month are the blue and orange lines, and scaled on the left-hand axis. And the shaded areas are 95% confidence intervals because I'm plotting mean activity on each day. This is mean gallons of gas, estimated gallons of gas purchased per month. As expected, the average estimated gallons purchased per month decreases as prices increased over this time period. And notably, it decreases pretty much in lockstep for both the financially healthy and the unhealthy people. So financially unhealthy people are not purchasing less gas, at least in our sample, when gas prices are super high. But we're more interested in whether these groups are changing how often they purchase gas. So next I look at frequency of gas station transactions and how that trended over time. This is transactions per month, mean transactions per month. And here I don't see any clear upward or downward trend for either group over the time period. If you squint, it looks like maybe financially unhealthy people are increasing the number of times per month they're purchasing gas when gas prices are very high between May 2022 and July 2022, but it's hard to glean much from this graph alone. But another clue may be found in looking at estimated quantity purchased per transaction. And again, these are very rough estimates because I'm using this national average price data. And I'm also making this pretty strong assumption that healthy people and unhealthy people would be subject to the same prices and the same changes in price on average. But with that in mind, you can see that in our sample, when gas prices were very high in spring and summer 2022, our financially unhealthy people were buying around 4 fewer gallons of gas per trip on average than our financially healthy people. And keep in mind, they were not buying less gas overall. So to me, this is a clue that people who are not financially healthy may have been increasing the frequency and reducing the size of their gas purchases relative to financially healthy people. Next, I try to estimate this more directly with linear regression. I'm modeling how transaction frequency is changing with price. I'm going to focus on column 4 for the sake of time, which has distinct relationships modeled for financially healthy and unhealthy people. I've included a quadratic term for price to capture how responses may differ at different price levels. And the interaction between financial health status and price allows us to see whether those responses were different for each group. And in column 4, I'm also controlling for estimated total gas purchases and on the individual level, and then also controlling for seasonality. And in short, from these coefficients, you can see that these relationships are curving in different directions for financially healthy and unhealthy people. So to visualize that, here's what those estimates from column 4 look like, actually plotted. And our post-estimation tests tell us that the slopes of these lines are significantly different from each other, but only when gas prices are between $4.50 and $5, with financially unhealthy people increasing how often they purchase gas relative to financially healthy people. And this may suggest that financially unhealthy people are only really making this adjustment differently from financially healthy people when gas prices are extremely high. All right, I had to blow through the results there to leave plenty of time to talk about all the issues with the data. So in addition to the sample size challenges I mentioned earlier, there are a few other unique limitations. First, we don't know to what extent this minority of people who have agreed to share their bank account data with us are different from the general population, especially with regard to unobservable characteristics like attitudes and spending behaviors and things like that. People also choose however many or few financial institutions they want to link to UAS FIN. And that means there's always a chance that someone just hasn't linked the credit card that they happen to use to buy all their gas. And I have no way of knowing whether that credit card exists or whether I'm missing that. For this kind of analysis, it's also unfortunate that I cannot observe quantity purchased at the transaction level. I have to back it out in this very awkward way by using this like national average price data, which sort of works for gasoline, but probably would work even worse for other kinds of goods. And I also cannot observe what was purchased at the transaction level. So unfortunately, people can buy things other than gas at gas stations, and people can also buy different grades of gasoline and substitute at the gas station. So I am just forced to ignore that with this kind of data. I'm also relying on Plaid's merchant categorization to identify purchases that happened at gas stations, and there's almost certainly some error in that. I found some implausible gas station transactions of multiple thousands of dollars and things like that. And finally, of course, we see this divergence in behavior between the financially healthy and unhealthy people in spring and summer 2022, but that could be due to things other than rising gas prices that were happening simultaneously. With those limitations in mind, I still think there are some important policy relevant implications from these results, because in my mind, it is notable that people are splitting these payments into smaller chunks, even for gas station transactions, which are these regularly occurring purchases that are in pretty small dollar amounts. And I think there are a few different possible explanations for why people might be doing this. The most urgent and plausible to me is that this is expressing an unmet need for liquidity. And the difference between financially healthy and unhealthy people, I think, hints at this. But people also may be engaging in kind of rule of thumb mental accounting strategies at the gas station. This would be like the Shaq explanation for what's going on. That seems to be what he's doing. He's averse to spending more than $20 a time at the gas station for some reason. And the wonkiest explanation that I can't rule out would be that people are actually They started purchasing gas in smaller amounts when gas prices were very high because they were betting that gas prices were about to decrease and hoping to spend less on gas in the very near future. So I'll end by saying that from a research method standpoint, I think the ability to merge transactional data onto the kind of rich background data you get from internet panels can be very powerful for explaining heterogeneity in consumer spending behavior, especially if we can overcome some of those data obstacles. Thank you.